Pierre Dubois, a 78-year-old man, had found refuge at the Sainte Marie retirement home, located in the heart of the charming city of Lyon. With its cobblestone streets and centuries-old historical architecture, Lyon provided a picturesque setting for Pierre's later years. The Sainte Marie house, an imposing 19th-century structure with its stone walls and tall windows, housed dozens of elderly people who, like Pierre, sought comfort and care for their remaining years. Pierre's days at the home followed a peaceful and predictable routine. He would wake up early, around 6:30 a.m., to the gentle sound of the nearby chapel's bells. After a light breakfast in the common dining room, he enjoyed spending his mornings in the well-maintained garden of the home, where the scent of roses mingled with the fresh smell of freshly cut grass. Pierre often sat on a weathered wooden bench, watching the birds and occasionally exchanging a few words with other residents. "Good morning, Pierre. It's a lovely day today, isn't it?" greeted Madame Rousseau, a silver-haired lady who always carried a book with her. "Ah, yes, Madame Rousseau. It's perfect for enjoying a good read outdoors," Pierre replied with a gentle smile. The afternoons were dedicated to activities organized by the home, bingo sessions, painting classes, or simply socializing in the common room. Pierre, being a reserved person, preferred to spend this time in his modest but comfortable room, flipping through old photo albums or writing letters to his daughter Amélie. However, the peace Pierre had found at Sainte Marie was about to be disrupted. On a seemingly ordinary afternoon, as the golden rays of the setting sun streamed through the corridor windows, Nurse Claudette made her usual rounds. Known for her efficiency and keen eye, always alert to the well-being of the residents, Claudette noticed something unusual when passing Pierre's room. The door was ajar, and through the crack, she saw Pierre sitting in his favorite chair, an old piece of furniture he had brought from home. But what caught Claudette's attention was the quick, furtive movement of Pierre's hands, as if he were hiding something. "Monsieur Dubois?" Claudette called softly, knocking gently on the door. "Is everything all right?" Pierre, startled, replied in a slightly trembling voice, "Ah, Claudette. Yes, everything is fine. I'm just resting a bit." But Claudette, guided by years of experience and a sharpened sixth sense for suspicious situations, entered the room. Her sharp eyes quickly spotted a small plastic bottle that Pierre was trying to hide under the chair cushion. "What's this, Monsieur Dubois?" she asked, extending her hand. Pierre, with a sigh of resignation, handed over the bottle. "It's just some pills to help my digestion, my dear. Nothing to worry about." Claudette examined the bottle seriously. There was no label, just a few white pills inside. "Monsieur Dubois, you know you can't take any medications that aren't prescribed by the home's doctor. It's against the rules." "But Claudette, I've been taking these for years. They've never harmed me," Pierre protested, his voice tinged with concern. But the nurse was already leaving the room, bottle in hand. "I'm sorry, Monsieur Dubois, but I have to report this to the management. It's for your own safety." The following hours were a whirlwind for Pierre. News quickly spread through the administration of Sainte Marie. Madame Lefebvre, the director, a middle-aged woman known for her rigidity and adherence to rules, urgently gathered her staff. In the oak-paneled meeting room with a large oval table at its center, the atmosphere was tense. Madame Lefebvre, seated at the head of the table, looked sternly at those present. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her firm voice resonating in the room, "we are facing a serious situation. One of our residents has been caught taking unauthorized medication. This is a severe violation of our rules and a potential health risk for the individual in question." Dr. Moreau, the home's resident doctor, tried to intervene. "Madame Lefebvre, perhaps we should first determine what type of medication it is but the director interrupted him brusquely. "Doctor, the rules are there for a reason. We cannot make exceptions, otherwise, it will be chaos. The safety of our residents must come first." After a brief discussion, where the more moderate voices were quickly silenced by Madame Lefebvre's unwavering determination, a decision was made. Pierre Dubois would be immediately expelled from the Sainte Marie retirement home. The news hit Pierre like a bolt from the blue. When Madame Lefebvre entered his room, accompanied by Claudette and a security officer, Pierre felt his world collapse. "Monsieur Dubois," announced Madame Lefebvre in a cold, formal voice, "due to your violation of the Sainte Marie Home's rules, specifically the consumption of unauthorized medication, the council has decided on your immediate expulsion. You have 2 hours to gather your belongings and leave." Pierre, stunned, could barely stammer a response. But this is my home. Where will I go? My daughter, she doesn't know." Claudette, visibly uncomfortable with the situation, tried to offer some comfort. "Monsieur Dubois, I can help you pack and call your daughter if you'd like." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of frantic activity and quiet despair. Pierre, his hands trembling, packed his clothes, photos, and memories into 2 old suitcases. Every cherished item seemed to carry the weight of a life abruptly interrupted. Meanwhile, Claudette, feeling guilty for having triggered this situation, repeatedly tried to contact Amélie, Pierre's daughter. Unfortunately, all her calls went unanswered. When the time expired, Pierre was escorted out of Sainte Marie. Standing on the sidewalk, his 2 suitcases at his feet, he took one last look at the building that had sheltered him these past years. The Lion sky, once so welcoming, now appeared dark and threatening. Where will I go now? Pierre wondered, feeling the weight of his 78 years more than ever. With a deep sigh, he picked up his suitcases and began to walk slowly down the street, with no clear destination, leaving behind the security and comfort he knew, towards an uncertain and frightening future. Amélie Dubois was in her office in downtown Lyon when she received the shocking news of her father's expulsion from the Sainte Marie retirement home. The brief and alarming message left in her mailbox by Nurse Claudette plunged her into dismay and worry. Without wasting time, Amélie abandoned her work as a lawyer and rushed to her car, a small blue Peugeot parked nearby. The Lyon traffic seemed to conspire against her, each red light increasing her anxiety. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of worries and unanswered questions. How could this have happened, she wondered, her hands gripping the steering wheel. Dad has always been so careful, so respectful of the rules. After what felt like an eternity, Amélie finally saw the imposing facade of the Sainte Marie home. But the scene that greeted her was far from normal. The parking lot in front of the home, usually calm, was filled with emergency vehicles. 3 ambulances were parked with their lights flashing, casting red and blue reflections on the stone walls of the building. Amélie's heart raced even faster. She parked quickly and rushed towards the main entrance. The sound of sirens and the murmur of worried voices filled the air. As she approached, she noticed a group of paramedics carrying a stretcher with an elderly man on it. The man seemed very uncomfortable, groaning softly as he was loaded into the ambulance. "Excuse me," Amélie said to one of the paramedics hurrying by. "What's happening here?" The man, with deep dark circles under his eyes and looking tired, replied quickly, "I can't give you details, ma'am. But we have a serious situation at the home. You'd better speak to the administration." Amélie nodded, feeling a knot form in her stomach. She headed towards the entrance, passing by nurses and doctors running back and forth. The entrance hall of the retirement home, normally a calm and welcoming place, was in utter chaos. Elderly people sat in wheelchairs or leaned on walkers, occupying every available space. Some cried quietly, others seemed disoriented and confused. The retirement home staff moved frantically, trying to calm the residents and organize care. Amélie looked around, desperately searching for her father, Pierre Dubois. She called out, her voice almost lost in the confusion. "Has anyone seen Pierre Dubois?" A nurse, recognizing the name, approached Amélie. "Are you family of Mr. Dubois?" "Yes, I'm his daughter." "Where is he? Is he all right?" The nurse hesitated for a moment. "Miss Dubois, your father is no longer here. He left, well, he was expelled earlier today." Amelie felt like the ground was falling away beneath her feet. What do you mean, he left the home? Where did he go? Before the nurse could answer, a sharp scream echoed through the hall. An elderly woman had fallen from her chair, writhing in pain. The nurse rushed to help her, leaving Amelie even more confused and worried. Determined to get answers, Amelie made her way through the crowd towards the director's office. The door was ajar, and she could hear excited voices from inside. Madame Lefebvre, Amelie said, knocking firmly on the door. I need to speak with you immediately. The director, a middle-aged woman with gray hair tied in a bun, looked at Amelie with a mixture of surprise and irritation. Who are you? Can't you see we're in the middle of an emergency? I'm Amelie Dubois, Pierre Dubois's daughter. I demand to know what happened to my father and what's going on here. Madame Lefebvre sighed deeply and ran her hand over her sweaty forehead. For a moment, her facade of unflinching efficiency seemed to waver, revealing the fatigue and worry underneath. Miss Dubois, we are facing a serious emergency. It appears we have a severe case of food poisoning affecting nearly all of our residents, explained Madame Lefebvre, her voice low to avoid further alarming the elderly people around. Amelie felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Food poisoning? How could that happen in an institution like this? Believe me, we are as shocked as you are, replied the director. Our food safety protocols are strict. We are investigating the cause, but for now, our priority is to care for the affected individuals. And my father? Insisted Amelie. Where is he? Why was he expelled? Madame Lefebvre looked uncomfortable with this question. Miss Dubois, your father was found, taking unauthorized medication. Our policies are very clear on this matter. It was a difficult decision, but necessary to maintain the safety of all residents. Amelie felt a mix of anger and incredulity. You kicked him out over a pill. And now everyone is sick except him. The irony of the situation was not lost on Madame Lefebvre, who had the decency to look embarrassed. It's an unfortunate coincidence, I admit. But we couldn't have foreseen. They were interrupted by Dr. Rousseau, who approached with a clipboard in hand. Madame Lefebvre, I've done a quick count. We have 47 residents showing severe symptoms, 23 with moderate symptoms, and only 5 who seem unaffected. Hearing this, Amelie quickly intervened. 5 people unaffected? Who are they? The doctor, surprised by the interruption, looked to Madame Lefebvre for guidance. The director nodded, indicating he should answer. Well, Dr. Rousseau began, consulting his notes, we have Mr. Leroux, who is on a special diet due to a recent surgery, Mrs. Beaumont, who didn't dine last night, Mr. Moreau and Mrs. Dupont, who were at the hospital for tests and returned this morning, and... Amelie pressed, sensing she was about to confirm her suspicions. And Mr. Dubois, the doctor concluded. But he's no longer my father, said Amelie, turning to Madame Lefebvre, her eyes bright with a mix of relief and accusation. He wasn't affected because you kicked him out before he could eat whatever caused this. The revelation hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. Madame Lefebvre seemed to struggle to find the right words. Miss Dubois, I understand your frustration, but, frustration? Amelie's voice rose. You expelled my father over a supposed rule violation, and it might have saved his life. Meanwhile, dozens of elderly people are suffering under your care. Dr. Rousseau, sensing the tension, tried to intervene. Please, ladies. We have an ongoing emergency. Can we discuss this later? Amelie took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. You're right, doctor. The priority now is to care for these elderly people. But, she turned to Madame Lefebvre, don't think this ends here. We need to find my father and understand exactly what happened. Madame Lefebvre nodded gravely. I agree, Miss Dubois. Once this crisis is under control, I promise we will conduct a thorough investigation, including your father's expulsion. With that promise in the air, Amelie walked away, determined to help wherever she could while her mind worked, trying to connect the dots between her father's mysterious medication, his expulsion, and the current crisis at St. Marie. As the situation at the St. Marie home remained chaotic but under stricter control by new health authorities, Amélie decided it was time to conduct her own investigation. She knew the key to understanding the situation lay in the mysterious pill her father had been taking. Determined, Amélie made her way to the room Pierre had occupied until just a few hours ago. The corridor was quieter now, most residents having been transferred to the hospital or being in intensive care in their own beds. She found her father's room door ajar and slipped inside quietly. The room, though partially emptied by Pierre's hasty departure, still bore traces of his presence. Amélie felt a pang in her heart seeing the unmade bed and a few personal belongings left behind on the dresser. "Where would you keep something important, Dad?" Amélie murmured to herself, beginning to search the room carefully. She opened drawers, checked under the mattress, and examined every nook and cranny of the small wardrobe. Her search seemed fruitless until her eyes landed on an old picture frame on the bedside table. It was a photo of her and Pierre, taken years ago during a family picnic. Carefully, Amélie picked up the frame and turned it over. Her fingers found a small protrusion on the back. With a slight click, a hidden compartment opened, revealing a small plastic bottle. "Bingo," Amélie whispered, her heart racing. She examined the bottle. There was no label, just a few white pills inside. Amélie hesitated for a moment, aware of violating her father's privacy, but the urgency of the situation outweighed her scruples. She took out her phone and snapped a few photos of the bottle and the pills. Then she carefully replaced the bottle in its hiding spot, determined to learn more about its contents. As she left the room, Amélie nearly bumped into Dr. Rousseau walking down the corridor. "Dr. Rousseau," she said, "can I speak with you for a moment? It's about my father." The doctor, visibly tired, nodded. "Of course, Miss Dubois. What can I do for you?" Amélie showed him the photos on her phone. "Doctor, I found this in my father's room. I think these are the pills he was taking. Can you identify them?" Dr. Rousseau adjusted his glasses and examined the images closely. After a few moments, his expression changed from concentration to surprise. "I can't be certain without a more detailed analysis, but at first glance, I'd say these are natural probiotics," he explained. "They're supplements that contain beneficial bacteria for the digestive system." Amélie felt a wave of both relief and frustration. "Probiotics? That's all? Why would my father hide something like that?" The doctor shrugged. "Many elderly people prefer to take their own medications and supplements. Perhaps your father feared we wouldn't approve their use here at the home." "But doctor," Amélie continued, an idea forming in her mind, "could these probiotics have a protective effect against food poisoning?" Dr. Rousseau thought for a moment. "In theory, yes. Probiotics can strengthen the gut flora, making the digestive system more resistant to certain types of contamination. It's not a guarantee, but it could explain why your father wasn't affected like the others." The revelation hit Amélie like a thunderbolt. Her father, in his quiet wisdom, had inadvertently protected himself from the catastrophe that struck the retirement home. The irony of the situation was almost palpable. What had led to his expulsion might have been the key to his protection. "Doctor," Amélie said, her voice filled with urgency, "we need to inform Madame Lefebvre. Maybe we can use this information to help the other residents." Dr. Rousseau nodded, a glimmer of hope in his tired eyes. "You're right, Miss Dubois. Let's talk to her immediately. Perhaps we can turn this discovery into something positive for everyone." As they headed to Madame Lefebvre's office, Amélie felt a mix of emotions: relief that her father was safe, frustration at the injustice of his expulsion, and a growing determination to right the wrongs that had been done. The little white pill her father had taken in secret had become the key to the mystery and, perhaps, the solution to the crisis at St. Marie. Amélie and Dr. Rousseau entered Madame Lefebvre's office and found the director deep in conversation with a public health inspector. Their arrival interrupted the discussion, and all eyes turned toward them. Madame Lefebvre, Amélie began firmly but respectfully, we have crucial information regarding the current situation. The director gestured for them to continue, her expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Dr. Rousseau explained the discovery of the probiotic and its possible link to Pierre's immunity to the food poisoning. The health inspector, a middle-aged man named Monsieur Dupont, listened attentively, his interest clearly piqued. "This is fascinating," Monsieur Dupont commented, adjusting his glasses. "If we can confirm this theory, it could be crucial not only for understanding what happened here but also for treating those affected." Madame Lefebvre, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. "This changes everything. Miss Dubois, I must admit we made a grave error in expelling your father." Amélie felt a wave of conflicting emotions, relief that her father was vindicated, but also frustration at the injustice he had suffered. "The important thing now is to correct that mistake and use this information to help the other residents," she responded diplomatically. Dr. Rousseau stepped in. "With your permission, Madame Lefebvre, I'd like to implement a treatment protocol using similar probiotics. It might not cure the sick immediately, but it could speed up their recovery." The director quickly agreed. "Do what you need to, doctor." "Monsieur Dupont, is this compliant with public health protocols?" The inspector confirmed. "Given the urgency of the situation, I authorize the experimental use. But we'll need detailed documentation of the entire process." As Dr. Rousseau hurried off to implement the new treatment, Amélie turned to Madame Lefebvre. "What about my father? We need to inform him and bring him back." The director looked genuinely remorseful. "You're absolutely right, Miss Dubois. I'll personally ensure he's found and brought back, with our deepest apologies." At that moment, a nurse rushed into the office. "Madame Lefebvre. We have an issue at reception. Mr. Dubois is here." Everyone exchanged looks of surprise before hurrying to the reception area. There they found Pierre, looking tired but determined, carrying a plastic bag. "Dad!" Amélie exclaimed, running to hug him. Pierre returned his daughter's embrace but kept his eyes on Madame Lefebvre. "I came as soon as I heard what happened," he said. "I brought these." He held up the bag, filled with bottles of probiotics. Madame Lefebvre stepped forward, visibly moved. "Monsieur Dubois, I can't find the words to express our regret. Your expulsion was a terrible mistake, and your generosity in coming back to help is admirable." Pierre nodded solemnly. "What's done is done. Now, let's help these people." Dr. Rousseau, who had returned, took the bag gratefully. "This will be very useful, Monsieur Dubois. I'll start administering it immediately." As the doctor moved away, Monsieur Dupont approached Pierre. "Sir, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you some questions about this supplement. Your expertise could be crucial to our investigation." Pierre agreed and soon engaged in a detailed discussion with the health inspector. Amélie watched the scene with a mix of pride and relief. Her father, unjustly expelled just hours earlier, was now at the heart of efforts to resolve the crisis. What had begun as a personal tragedy had turned into an opportunity to save lives. Madame Lefebvre approached Amélie. "Miss Dubois, I know words aren't enough, but I want to again express our deepest apologies. I assure you we'll do everything in our power to right this wrong." Amélie nodded, her expression grave but compassionate. "Thank you, Madame Lefebvre. But the most important thing now is to ensure something like this never happens again. We need to review the home's policies, create more flexible and humane protocols." The director agreed. "You're absolutely right. As soon as this crisis is over, I'd like to invite you and your father to participate in a comprehensive review of our policies and procedures." As the conversation continued and plans for the future began to take shape, Amélie couldn't help but reflect on how a simple misunderstanding had nearly resulted in tragedy but had also paved the way for positive and lasting changes at the Sainte Marie home. In the weeks following the crisis at the Sainte Marie retirement home, a remarkable transformation began to take shape. The incident that nearly became a tragedy ended up catalyzing significant changes in the institution and the surrounding community. Pierre Dubois, unjustly expelled, became a central figure in this transformation. His experience with the probiotic that protected him from food poisoning piqued the interest of not only the home's administration but also researchers in geriatric health. A team of scientists from the local university began an in-depth study of the effects of probiotics on the health of the elderly, using Pierre's case as a starting point. The Sainte Marie home became a research site, and many residents volunteered to participate in the studies. Amélie, for her part, played an active role in overhauling the home's policies. In close collaboration with Madame Lefebvre, she helped develop new guidelines that balanced the need for safety with respect for the residents' autonomy and individual choices. One of the most significant changes was the establishment of a residents' council, where the elderly could express their opinions and actively participate in decisions affecting their daily lives. Pierre was elected the first president of this council, a role he assumed with humility and dedication. Dr. Rousseau, inspired by recent events, launched a health education program for residents and their families. Weekly discussions on nutrition, medications, and overall well-being became an essential part of the home's routine, fostering a continuous learning and empowerment environment. Madame Lefebvre, deeply impacted by the experience, became a staunch advocate for retirement home reform throughout the region. She openly shared the mistakes made at Sainte Marie and the lessons learned, inspiring other institutions to re-evaluate their practices. The story of the Sainte Marie home drew the attention of local, and eventually national, media. Journalists, fascinated by the institution's turnaround, produced reports highlighting the positive changes and the spirit of community that had emerged from the crisis. One of the most touching moments was the ceremony held in honor of Pierre. This event, attended by residents, staff, and local authorities, not only celebrated his unintended contribution to the health of the elderly but also symbolized the new era of respect and collaboration within the home. During the ceremony, Amélie gave an emotional speech. "What happened to my father could have been a tragedy. Instead, it became the catalyst for profound and necessary change. Today, we not only celebrate my father but all of you, residents, staff, family members, who turned a moment of crisis into an opportunity for growth and unity." Amélie's words resonated deeply with everyone present, symbolizing the spirit of renewal that had taken hold of the Sainte Marie home. In the months that followed, the positive results of the changes implemented became increasingly evident. The residents' overall health improved, satisfaction rates rose significantly, and Sainte Marie became a model for other retirement homes. Pierre, now comfortably settled in his room at the retirement home, often reminisced about the strange journey that had brought him here. What had started as a secret habit of taking probiotics had turned into a revolution in how the elderly were cared for and respected. Amélie, observing the new life pulsating at Sainte Marie, felt a mix of pride and gratitude. The injustice her father had suffered was the starting point for something far greater than she could have imagined. As the sun set over the Sainte Marie retirement home, casting a golden glow on the windows, it was clear to everyone that a new era had begun. An era of respect, understanding, and true care, born from the ashes of a mistake that had nearly cost lives but ultimately changed them for the better.